Good morning. I'm here with my security. Good to see you on the live stream here for The Expert. I'm kidding, the sound's working. I just thought I would do that. So I'm happy you're with me on this sixth and last episode of 2017. The Expert. At the Jersey Shore, you see people walking around, couples, and the woman has a t-shirt on with an arrow going this way and says, "I'm with stupid," and the guy is here and it says stupid. What would make you do this? I mean, what kind of relationship would make you do this? And sometimes the guy's on the other side, so it says, "I'm with stupid," and stupid's over. I mean, come on. So I'm here to talk about expertise today. I want to say good morning to all of you, Joanna and Dennis and Matthew and Roberta and Leslie and Gail and Praveen and Philippe and everyone else. I want to say hello to you. Thank you for coming. And I think we'll have some fun today because I've just changed things, in the last 30 minutes, which, I'm apt to do. So before I do anything else, let me just tell you what this expert's going to be doing in the near future. So, live stream begins again in January. Next year we do two episodes, or two series, 10 episodes each. One is on the genesis of the sale, from soup to nuts, everything you wanted to know about the sale and how to conclude it and convert people to business. The second is about exponential growth and how you grow your overall business into the kind of business that will keep you in the lifestyle which you prefer. Our first one is January 29th, and both series are on the same day. You can set up, you can sign up for either series or both. We shoot them both on the same day, 1 hour each approximately. The Evergreen Workshop with Colleen Francis, February 6th to 7th in Miami. We'll be talking about how you create seven-figure clients over time. Merck and Hewlett-Packard and Calgon, these people who paid me over the years, year in and year out, for Colleen as well. How do we do that? That will be in Miami on those dates, and it's right across the street from the famous Bacon Bar. Everything's better with bacon. March 13th and 14th, we're going to do Shameless Meets Social. Shameless Promotion meets social media. Lisa Lauder, who handles all my technical work, is probably furious right now at the way I'm doing this because she's a perfectionist. But the two of us will talk about how you can promote yourself using social media very, very well, no matter whether you're retail or corporate based in your sales. I was always skeptical about this. Lisa has changed my mind about a great deal of it. Master class is this December 6th and 8th, the week after Thanksgiving. And that will be here in Newport. I have 2 seats available. We have 10 people. I take a maximum of 12. And that is about doing things in a completely different way. Masterclass is indeed that. For example, one of the things I talk about is how you do not need to get value from the client. You tell the client what the value is to raise your fees. In Carmel, California, February 15th and 16th is my Mentor Summit. I'm inviting outsiders, that is people outside my mentor community. Write me at alan@summitconsulting.com. I'll tell you how to do it. It costs virtually nothing. It's an expense offset. We have 40 people signed up already. 2 very exciting days in a great place, the Bernardus Inn. And then Growth Access is ongoing. That's my series where you can access my intellectual property in print and audio and video for $2,500 forever. Your forever, not my forever. Always there. I add to it during the year. Growth Access, one of the best deals I have. About $75,000 worth of material in there. So $2,500, it's yours for life. All right, thank you for listening. We've got some more people here. Hello, Paul and Joanne and Gary. Happy to have you with me. Rick. And so we move on. Now, I told you I changed things this morning about expertise. Expertise is about what's in here and how you deliver it. Now, let me give you some bizarre example here. I've been reading this new book. Some of you have too, called Leonardo, by Walter Isaacson. He's the guy who wrote about Benjamin Franklin and Steve Jobs and so forth. Now, it's interesting. He wrote about Renaissance figures in these people, Renaissance-type people. But now he's got a real Renaissance figure, Leonardo da Vinci. And I've seen The Last Supper in Milan, and it's striking. And I learned that you don't call him Da Vinci. That just means the town he's from. His real name, of course, is Leonardo. And so I'm about 2/3 of the way through this massive book. But what happens now, as I step over security here, this is the New York Times this morning. Leonardo da Vinci painting sells for $450 million. That's just my expertise alarm going off. $450 million, shattering auction records. I want to read one paragraph. The artwork here that was sold is called Salvator Mundi, subject of legal disputes, and amassed a price history that ranges from less than $10,000 in 2005, when it was spotted at an estate auction, to $200 million when it was first offered for sale by a consortium of 3 dealers in 2012. But no institution besides the Dallas Museum of Art, which in 2012 made an undisclosed offer for the painting, showed public interest in buying it. Finally, in 2013, Sotheby's sold it privately for $80 million to Yves Bouvier, a Swiss art dealer and businessman. Soon afterward, he sold it for $127 million to the family trust of the Russian billionaire collector Dmitry Rybolovlev. I'll try that again, Rybolovlev. And Mr. Rybolovlev's family trust was the seller of this last one. $450 million. Now, the reason I raise this, in addition to this coincidence with my reading Leonardo, is that experts differ on the painting. They differ on its origination, on its provenance, on its worth, on whether it's even a good painting by Leonardo. And so we have warring experts here. But the experts on the side of, yes, it is Leonardo, and yes, it's damn good, even if it's not perfect, won out. And somebody paid $450 million, by far a record for a painting. This is the value of expertise. We depend on experts all the time. Whether we admit it or not, we do. Because it's too difficult to be expert in everything ourselves. So my question to you is, to what degree are you providing expertise to people who can use it, and you're charging for it, and you're manifesting it? Because here's what's occurred to me as I've been thinking about it more this morning, and it looks like this. I'm bound to get these papers mixed up. We'll see what happens. Experience, right? We all have experience. And I'm going to call this a combination of utilization and application. That's experience. And I'm going to add to that your insights and intellectual property that you create. And I'm going to add to that what I'm going to call targeted visibility. I'll talk more about that later. But targeted visibility means, in your field, the degree to which you make sure you're known. Outside of consulting, a lot of people don't know me. Most people don't know me. I can't get arrested. But within consulting, if you don't know me, you're an amateur. So, your experience, your insights, and the degree to which you target to be visible in your field equals your expertise. And if you multiply that times promotion, not just targeted visibility, but promotion. And this is what Lisa and I are talking about in terms of social meets shameless. Then you have a strong brand. So this is the way expertise works. It attracts people to you, but you have to develop it. You have to build it. You have to focus on it. So I'm going to talk to you about a few more things here. I invite you, as always, to ask questions. I'll be happy to answer them, and I'll glance over there every so often to see what's going on. I'm on a plane with a go-go unit, so nothing seems to be working. That's because go-go is really not meant to stream at high speeds, I believe. But there's a fast forward on the bottom of the screen to go to. Good work, people. Okay, I'm back to my easel sheets here. So I want you to think about this. I want to come back to expertise in Leonardo, and I promise after this I'll get off it. But it fascinates me, and of course it's all about me. And here's the thing. Since Aristotle, and including Leonardo, who is great at this, here's what experts have done. They've observed things in the environment, they've analyzed them, and then they've made predictions. They've observed, analyzed, and made predictions. And I want to suggest to you that that's the easy route to expertise. So for example, if you observe, as Leonardo did, that some rocks are created in layers. And these are called sedimentary rocks, by the way. There's only three kinds of rocks: sedimentary, igneous, and metamorphic. I just came back from Fiji, which is volcanic, which creates a different kind of a rock, which creates an igneous rock and a metamorphic rock at times. I know this because I minored in geology. But if you think of some rocks being sedentary, and you can see the layers, the striations, they're often different colors, and you analyze the fact that these layers occur over eons. They occur over a long time period, so they're likely to capture things before the next layer occurs. Then you can predict that you will see a lot of fossils from ancient times in that rock because they will be trapped in there and saved in there. And that's exactly what happened, of course, with water rising and lowering and with mud in beds and so forth. And so you can tell people, if you want to find fossils easily, look for sedimentary rock. So that's an observation, an analysis, and a prediction. Now, if I said to you that people leaving our company have not cited the fact that they don't like the products and services, but that they don't feel they're treated well, and I analyze that and I say, well, it's not a company policy to treat people poorly. Therefore, they're leaving bosses. They're not leaving my company. I don't have to build my company brand. I don't have to increase my compensation, which is the error that's often made. If you pay unhappy people more money, you have wealthier unhappy people. So my prediction is, therefore, since people are leaving bosses, hire managers, promote managers with a sensitivity and ability to develop talent and to nurture talent and retain talent and make it part of their emphasis areas. And I predict that will cut our attrition. If I say to you that people are not calling back, I get this daily. I thought I made a good impression, but they are not calling me back. What's wrong with them? Well, it's something wrong with you. So if people aren't calling you back, that's your observation of your behavior. It's my observation as a coach. My analysis is you're not creating a sense of urgency. You're not creating a sense of import. And so my projection is you have to work on irresistible value, not on a sale. Irresistible value. We need people like you around here. I don't care what you work on, rather than the sale. So what I'm trying to get across to you so far is this, that expertise isn't complicated or difficult. It's about observing within your field, analyzing within your field, and then making predictions within your field. So keep that easy path in mind. You know, Occam's razor, the correct answer is usually the shortest and easiest line. That's what Aristotle did. That's what Leonardo did. And today, 500 years after his death, his paintings are selling for $450 million. I go to my weatherboard here. Let's see. Gary, we're saying something's low end, low sound, they're saying. We're good? Okay, the sound is good. Hover over the screen. It's at the max. Thanks. Now it's fine. Okay. Thank you for self-correcting. Now, every move is a picture. So what I want to suggest to you here about predictions and about expertise and so forth is this. You can't be afraid. You can't say, how do I validate it? Is this really true? Do I have to worry about it? Don't forget, we're not talking about predictions in terms of climate. We're not talking about predictions in terms of international relationships. We're talking about your field. We're talking about your expertise. Right here on my weather map here, that is all of you talking, I can see that some of you helped each other right there. People with expertise helped others, and it works. I was at some workshop I was running. I forget which one it was, but it was recently. And people were paying a lot of money to be there. And I said to them, look, I am going to start with some predictions. Usually people ask me at the end of the session, Alan, please make some predictions for us. Give us some feel about where things are going. I said, let me do it at the beginning so we can talk about them as these couple of days go on. And so here are 16 predictions. And I'll go through them quickly. A rising global middle class will tend to curtail warfare, as more haves will not want to sacrifice their gains. I'm thinking particularly of China here. Chinese hegemony will grow immensely in all parts of Asia. There will be unprecedented political realignment in the U.S. as a result of the Trump election victory, and there'll be reform in gerrymandering, lobbying, and even third-party viability because people were so unhappy with the results of this election, probably on both sides. Number 4, automobile creation will be done by software companies, such as Microsoft and Apple, with traditional manufacturers simply assembling the vehicle around the software. 5, technology will allow weather to be weaponized, and some countries will be able to create hurricanes, cyclones, maybe even earthquakes. 6, Europe will be de-Europeanized by the influx and the high birth rates of immigrants from the Middle East, and these societies will change dramatically. 7, there will be free or low-cost education in the U.S. as the obscene debt levels become untenable for student loans and such loans become unprofitable. 8, big box stores will morph into small box stores with local relationships but global inventories and offerings. 9, manufacturing is again surging in the U.S. It will surge more, especially with highly unique manufacturing and three-dimensional copying. Number 10, cybersecurity will become an individual responsibility to avoid hacking of millions of accounts, with customers maintaining double and triple action passcodes that change daily. There will be high stakes, number 11, high stakes virtual sports with both individual and teams, including betting. People with goggles on, fantasy football on steroids. Number 12, single income families will grow with the intent of one parent deliberately staying home to raise children, taking care of social interests, or even alternate in working with the other. Number 13, older and older people will remain gainfully employed, and retirement will become an artifact of the past. 14, charter, independent, and homeschooling will upend traditional warehouse-style education and finally remove power from teachers' unions. 15, there will be a major tax overhaul and simplification in the U.S. 16, Uber alles, I call this, meaning that full-time professional drivers, such as Uber, will take over trucking, boating, and even flying, working for independent outside contractors. Now, you might agree with some of those or not. I don't really care. Those were my predictions. I said, these are pretty good. I think I'll put them on my forum. My forum is free for people in my community. And I put them up there, and sure enough, somebody writes in and says, I don't think these are really predictions. I think they're just current trends, and you're taking the trends and talking about them. I said, I don't care what you think. Okay. Doesn't matter to me. There's always somebody ready to come down. The fact is, it's difficult for people to make predictions, and they don't think of themselves as experts. It's easy to critique others' predictions. So if people are making predictions, and some of these are already coming true, if people make predictions that are wrong all the time, you don't listen to them. It's sort of self-sanctioning. But if you make predictions that often are true, or usually are true, people will listen to you. So again, these are global predictions I made, because for me it's fun, and I consider myself a globalist. But if you reduce yourself, if you just think about your field, no matter how narrow or wide it is, then the predictions you make can establish you with that visibility we're talking about in your field. So to what extent, besides your blogs and your newsletters and your speeches, your teleconferences, your podcasts, whatever it is you're doing, to what extent are you including in there predictions? Expertise expressed into the future. I'm going to check for questions. Okay. I don't see any questions. I hope your technical problems are alleviated because I'm having a good time. All right, so let me go back to this. I think an expert is a predominantly accepted authority within his or her field. An expert is a predominantly accepted authority within his or her field. And what I mean by predominantly is not everybody would agree. In fact, the more expert you get and the more shamelessly you promote it, the more people take shots. And that's good. It's a metric. It's a metric that tells you people are listening because they're taking shots. And that's okay. I will give you an isolated, hopefully non-emotional example. I think John Madden was one of the greatest football commentators I'd ever heard. He used to be a coach, the Oakland Raiders. He went on TV. Now they have video games named after him, football games named after him. But Madden was a great commentator. And he talked about stuff, really cool. And then he retired in his 70s somehow. He's still around. He's a great guy. But people would take shots at John Madden, this expert commentator. Not many, but some would. Well, he doesn't understand the modern game. He doesn't understand what's happening. It's, he's thinking old style. He missed this, he missed that. He's getting old, People tell me I'm getting old, yeah? Well, tough. I'm good as ever, if not better. So people took shots even at Madden. People take shots at people on top. People are taking shots at what? This Leonardo painting. So you have to expect that. So what I'm telling you is with expertise, don't expect perfection. With expertise, don't expect uniform agreement. One of the metrics is people begin shooting at you, and that's a good sign. So when people say to me, you're wrong about this, you're wrong about that, people are listening. Who cares? So predominantly expected. You might be known outside your field, but probably not. But within your field, the ne plus ultra for people like Marshall Goldsmith and for Seth Godin and Marcus Buckingham and me is that if you're in these fields and you don't know who we are, you're an amateur. It's not us, it's you. So, we hear of what? Expertise. We hear of expert witness, right? We hear of expert marksman. Marksperson? Okay. Sounds like one of the brothers, but... And so if you take a look at the way I have separated this here, what I'm talking about is mastery and the pragmatic application of mastery. So not just enough to know, but to know how to apply. Remember I talked about utilization before, right? I talked about application. So, if you have high mastery as an expert and high ability to apply this daily in a pragmatic fashion, here's how you change this proposal to have 3 options of escalating fees with a high ROI against value. You're a trusted advisor. And indeed, I have a huge coaching program. If you can apply things really well, but you don't have a lot of mastery of it, you're a contractor working under somebody else's orders. You're working under somebody else's guidance. And if you think about it, a lot of you are faced with a client who tells you how to consult. They say, we want a 2-day leadership program. We want 30 days of coaching. You're a contractor because they don't believe you really have the mastery. They just believe you can apply. If you have high mastery, but not a lot of pragmatic application, you're a specialist. I was called as an expert witness twice in my life. Once on ethics in an organization. And the defense brought me in. The plaintiff brought me in. It was against a Fortune 100 company. Plaintiff brings me in, the plaintiff's lawyer, and we're at the deposition with this huge law firm in New York. It's on, 15 floors of a building, 1,000 lawyers, 100 partners, and me, right? And so I give this deposition for both sides, come back the next week, and the other side has an expert there too. But this guy, all he does is, I've been an expert witness twice in my life. That's a 30-year career in consulting. All this guy does is serve as an expert witness. No pragmatic consulting, no practical consulting, no clients. He's just an expert witness. So he was this specialist they brought in. Who's more credible, him or me? And then if you have low mastery and low application, of course, you're ignored. Who cares? And so where do you want to be here? You want to be here because you not only have the mastery, but you're able to apply it. So unless you can apply and utilize this mastery, you're not going to be seen as the kind of viable expert that's needed. So another way to look at this is this. This is mastery and this is promotion. Remember I said before targeted visibility, and I would talk more about it. So here you have mastery and here you have promotion. When you promote strongly and you have high mastery, you have a strong brand. And when you have a strong brand, what happens? People come to you. So it's the opposite of this specialist. It's the opposite of the person who's the expert witness and solely an expert witness. This is when people come to you. This happens in all professions. There's a difference between one saying, please get me the best heart surgeon you can, and I want Dr. Armstrong from Boston General, because Dr. Armstrong has the brand. If you have high mastery but low promotion, you're invisible. People have to find you. They have to seek you out. And that's a tough way to earn a living, isn't it? If you have high promotion but low mastery, you're just the empty suit. And so people hear you. Some people claim with this Leonardo painting, they're outraged because it was highly promoted. Sotheby's actually engaged an outside promotional company to help build interest in the sale. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but they're outraged by it. And of course, you're a non-starter if you have neither of these. So my question to you would be, to what degree, not only are you building your expertise, but to what degree are you expressing it? To what degree do people see it? So let's see. 1, 2, I think 3 would follow. Voila. So rate yourself in your field. Remember, in your field, I want you to rate yourself. And be honest, there's nobody with you. I can't see what you're thinking or writing down. But I want you to think, in your field, 5 is everybody knows you. I'm a 5. In the field, everybody knows who you are. They don't know you personally, perhaps, but they know who you are. 4 is you're widely known. Not everybody, but widely known. You ought to read this book. This guy's great. Geez, I don't know if I know him. Well, most of my friends do. Take a look. 3 is you're somewhat known. Some folks know you. And 2 is a few people have heard of you, preferably outside of your family. And a 1 is nobody knows who the heck you are. Now, in all candor in your field, whether it's finance or IT, it's strategy, it's leadership, it's change, it's OD, no matter what your field is, nonprofit, I want you to rate yourself. Think about it. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I want you to really think about it. I think it's important. All right, go. All right, turn in your papers. What'd you come up with? I am going to bet that most of you are not above a 3. Maybe a 3.5, 3.7. For the analytics out there, a 3.72. But that's where you are. And so the good news is you got room to grow. And you need to do that. Now let me see if I can help with some questions. First question's from Jeff. What recommendations would you make about how much to keep up with global news, politics, to drive the ability to predict? I would suggest that you make a lot of effort toward doing that. First of all, it's fun. It's interesting. Secondly, it makes you an object of interest to others. You know, my wife says, I can talk to anyone about anything. I might not have their expertise. I mean, if I'm talking to a doctor about heart stents, or I'm talking to a lawyer about torts, but I can talk to them about things. So I would say you make a great effort toward doing that. And it also helps in your business because you can equate what your clients and prospects do. Remember I said create irresistible value with what's going on around them. And so it's important to know how they compare to others. It's important to know how things like technology and politics and demographics and the economy and so forth relate to any particular client. I said before in my predictions that small box stores will replace big box stores because my feeling is that they'll have a personalization without sacrificing the global kind of inventory they have that's far greater than what they get today. I mean, let's face it, you walk into a Best Buy, you walk into a Target, you walk into these big stores, usually you don't feel a very close bond. You walk into your local coffee shop and people know your name. You know, it's like the old Cheers thing where everybody knows your name. I'd spend a lot of time on that. And so if I were you, depending on where you are, you know, Jeff, you're here in the US, you read the Wall Street Journal every day. You might read The Economist if you're elsewhere. You might read the Globe and Mail. You might read the New York Times. It depends where you are and what you're doing. Somebody in my coaching program, Steve Bleistein, who's in Tokyo, just got a major article published in the major Tokyo newspaper, which we worked on how to do that. And since he's in strategy, he's seen as an expert in a variety of affairs and businesses and organizations, and it helps his strategic business. Let's see, Gail, how do these concepts apply when you're entering a new market and evolving your expertise? I would suggest you seize the day. And I'm going to talk about this, I think, a little later. But by seizing the day, carpe diem, I mean this. If you're going to a new market, you need to be familiar, Gail, with two basic dimensions, all right? And all of the rest of you too. But two basic dimensions. One, who are the key players in the field right now? And two, what are the real hot issues in this field? And so I would start with that kind of simplicity. And in most fields that you enter, with rare exception, there are not a boatload of key players. There are maybe two or three. In solo consulting, I'm just about alone, for example, and I am alone. And so you don't need to do a whole lot more than read my work if you wanted to get into this field. I mean, come on, it's true. So who are the two or three key contributors, and what are the three or four key issues? And once you familiarize yourself with that, then start to ask yourself this question. How do I make inroads? How do I improve on it? How do I create a provocative, contrarian kind of a stance? And that's what you want to do. If I haven't answered your question, Gail, write back. Jeff is back. You've previously noted that you don't read much in the consulting field. What other fields are you exploring right now to keep up with your thinking expertise? Well, I'm reading about art. I'm reading about Leonardo. I read about history. History is extremely important because it tells us why and how we're here. I read biographies because I love to read what people had to overcome, how people made their way. I think it's fascinating. And I don't like to read autobiographies. I like to read independent biographies because they're much, much more objective. And you know, I've read 3 different biographies of Oscar Wilde, who I find is one of the most fascinating people in history. A great wit, greatly troubled, demons, horrible end of his life. But you read different biographies because you get different kinds of learning from it. You won't be surprised to know I've read 5 different biographies of Frank Sinatra. I've read 3 different biographies of Grant, and so forth and so on. You can read innumerable biographies of Winston Churchill, but they all give you a slightly different slant. Autobiographies tend to be hagiographies. They're overly kind. So I would suggest history. I would suggest biographies. I would also suggest science, because it's increasingly important to understand what real is and not fake. If you want to read, some of you have heard this, I apologize, but if you want to read great books, go find all of Stephen Jay Gould's books. Stephen Jay Gould was the curator. He was the department head up at Harvard in paleontology. He died in his 50s of lymphoma. It was a horrible loss. And many of his books are compilations of his columns. Some are discrete books in themselves. I have about 12 upstairs. I think I have all of them. It's things like The Panda's Thumb, The Flamingo's Smile. He talks about some of the great extinctions in history, but he combines them all with modern and contemporary things like baseball statistics and why we change. It's fascinating reading. So when you read things like that, Jeff, you become an object of interest to others. Great question. Thank you. Ron, when a non-economic buyer requests a proposal, how can you nicely request that the economic buyer get involved so that you can show your expertise to the person who can sign the check? First of all, minimize your exposure to non-economic buyers, that is, to gatekeepers. Only use them to get to the buyer. Never give them a proposal, ever. Once you're associated with a gatekeeper, it's hard to be associated with a senior person, with a buyer. And again, this is in my coaching program, I face this on a weekly basis. Somebody just posted yesterday or this morning an issue they had, and I said, let me guess immediately, this is not a buyer. And he said, well, you're right. I said, well, stop it. And so here's the language you use. Ethically, I have to talk to the person who's making the financial investment, who has the fiduciary responsibility, so that I can determine whether I can meet their expectations or not. That's an ethical requirement of consulting. So the other person says, well, I'm tasked, they say, to get some preliminary information before I set up a meeting like that. So I need to know your rates and your fees and how you would go about this. And you say, I cannot do that. And if anybody does that for you, I can't understand why you would possibly consider them, because it's the wrong way to go about a project, and it shouldn't be done that way. Here's something else you can say, Ron. Well, who would make this decision? And the gatekeeper says, Mary. And you say, okay, fine. Given what I have to do, I'm going to contact Mary. Do you want me to tell her that we talked or not? It's that simple. And you can't be afraid of losing business. Gatekeepers will kill you. Too many people waste too much time dealing with gatekeepers. That's not who experts deal with. Okay, Gail says, thank you. She's happy. I will move on. I have time. All right, so you've rated yourself here. So what I want to suggest to you is, how do you develop expertise? And these last couple of questions were along those lines. But how do you develop expertise? And what does that look like? So a lot of this will resemble how you develop thought leadership, which I've covered in the past in various venues. But a thought leader has to have expertise, and an expert can be a thought leader. They're not necessarily synonymous, but they often are. So, number one, how do you develop expertise? Well, Gail, I think this is what I mentioned to you. Know all the major views and people in your field. What do you know? There you go. So understand who they are and what they're thinking. Don't be derivative. Don't copy what they do. You know, when Chicken Soup for the Soul came out, not that that's expertise, but, and that book just took off. I mean, these guys were smart marketers, Canfield and what's his name? Really smart marketers. But it's a compilation, not a book. I immediately got all kinds of requests from people in the National Speakers Association, to which they belong and I belong, that they were going to write books, you know, turkey soup for the kidney, and so forth. And they wanted examples from me to use in their books, and I had to sign a paper that said, I surrender all rights to my story, which you will now have copyright to because you're going to change the content in the meter. This is what it said. And I told them, never darken my doorstep again. Get out of here. All derivative people. Now, one of these books worked. So find the major views from the major people. Don't be derivative, but understand what's going on in your field. In consulting, you know, one of the things you find out immediately is that the original Big Eight were really accounting firms looking for more money and went into the consulting business because they had trusting relationships with clients. But who occupies, who populates an accounting firm? Analytics. How were they charging? By the numbers they could put in boxes, by the minute, by the hour, by the day. How do lawyers charge? By 6-minute intervals. I shall tell you a quick story. A lawyer dies young in life, 47 years old, and goes to heaven. And he's talking to St. Peter. And he says to St. Peter, this isn't fair. I'm only 47. I shouldn't be here. Now, I think it's a miracle he's in heaven, but you'll excuse that. And St. Peter says, you don't understand. We go by billable hours, and you're really 153. Think about that story. You'll get it. So, number two, how do you develop expertise? You create unique IP frequently. So now I understand the people in the field. I understand the hot issues, and I'm going to create unique IP. I'm going to tell people you bill on value. You don't bill based on time. Time's not valuable. Results are valuable. I'm going to tell people you never give a single yes or no option, a binary option. You give multiple options. It increases your chance for a sale by 50%. I'm going to tell people never spend any amount of time with a non-buyer except to find out who the buyer is. You get the picture. Number three, do pro bono work. You want to be an expert? You want your expertise to be visible? Do pro bono work. Find a charity or an arts group, nonprofit, with whom you can shine, and you'll be highly visible. Number four, speak at conferences. A lot of you say, I'd rather not speak, I don't like to market that way. That's fair enough, and you're marketing if you don't want to speak. But if you really want to be perceived as an expert, you have to be public. You have to be in the public forum. So speak at conferences. Number five, create visuals, including videos. Process visuals, graphics, illustrations. Show your IP dramatically. People focus on visuals and they remember them much more readily. Number six, create catchphrases. Experts create catchphrases. You might not think about this, but that's what they do. So for example, Marshall Goldsmith says, what got you here won't get you there. I say, $1,000,000 consulting. I say, I can make another dollar, but I can't make another minute. And so on and so forth. All of us have these catchphrases that help support and cement our expertise. Be contrarian. I don't think I have to say a lot more about that. Publish a lot. You know, I used to talk 5 years ago about publishing a book. Now I talk about publishing a book every other year at least. Be in journals and periodicals and articles electronically and hard copy. You have to publish a lot. It's still very, very meaningful to convey expertise. Avoid being derivative. I talked about that. Observe and use client examples. The more you can make this real to people, the more you can show contemporary examples, the more effective you'll be. I use Tesla all the time because I think it's an example of a charity, not a car company. And my prediction is Tesla's going to be sold. That's the only reason Musk is doing this. He's going to sell this to Fiat or GM or somebody. And so there you have it, you know. Be an advisor, not an implementer. Experts seldom roll up their sleeves and get involved hands-on. Experts advise. And if you want to get into advisory work, which is highly lucrative and low labor intensity, that's what experts do. I go back to my chart. Ron. We got that one. Okay. All right. More questions? Let me know. So here are 11 observations on how you develop expertise. You don't have to do all 11 at once, but I would put them up somewhere, put a Post-it note someplace, and I would ask myself how I'm doing. And let me just reinforce, experts, if they promote well, create powerful brands which draw people to them. So it's not just a matter of being on a pedestal. It's a matter of people coming to you. I'll go back to Leonardo again. With this whole analogy fascinates me. You know, he was vying for commissions when he was unknown. And when he became known, he started to turn down commissions. And people would come to him. And they'd come to him to decorate the interior of a palace or to create a painting or a sculpture. And the fact is that he was casual about it. Some things he started, he never finished. Most things he started, he never finished. He doesn't have that many paintings in public. You know, but Mona Lisa's not bad, right? And so people flock to you. So, in your field, whatever your field is, name the acclaimed experts. Name the people you would think of immediately. Who are they? And what about them? What do you learn from them? What are they looking at? How can you be different and special? What are their 4 outstanding traits? You think of experts in your field, what are their 4 outstanding traits? And then ask yourself, how will you build similar traits? So what I'm saying is, don't emulate their work, but emulate their behavior. Emulate the traits and characteristics that have made them experts in your field, and ask yourself what you need to get there. You have to be an expert. Now, listen carefully here. You have to be an expert, but not the best. There are other experts in coaching besides Marshall, and they make a good living. Let's just say Marshall is the most famous, but other experts make a good living. You don't have to be the only one or the finest one by acclamation. You just have to be superb at what you do, and there's room for more than one. The best golfers, the best singers, the best executives, the best speakers, all of these people use expert coaches. So there is more than one expert coach. Now, here are the traits I suggest. You know, when you take a look at these people, you say, what are their traits? They have a calm confidence. They tend to push back. They have a strong vocabulary. They use examples, war stories, and metaphors. And they prescribe. They don't look for consensus. They don't look for unanimity. They prescribe. So those are traits that I see. Maybe you see different kinds of traits in the people you're looking at. But I'd suggest you consider that as traits you might want to emulate. And as far as this goes in terms of expertise, I call this the girth of experience, the girth of expertise, if you like. On a wide basis, you could be an expert in sales. Nothing wrong with that. Or you can be an expert in Salesforce development, which I think is slightly narrower. Or an expert in sales compensation. Or an expert in sales strategy. All of those are viable. The question is, how broad do you want to be? My expertise is in solo consulting, and I'm moving my expertise toward individual performance and success for entrepreneurs. And so I wrote a book called $1 Million Maverick, and I wrote a book called Life Storming with Marshall, and my next book is called 3Score and More, which comes out in April. And so I am moving my expertise, and Gail, that's how I enter a new market, by doing those kinds of things. So, my question to you is, do you want to be an expert on teamwork, teams? Because, one of the acknowledged experts there is Lencioni, right? The 7 good habits of a team or the 6 bad habits of a team, whatever it is. But Lencioni's got that, pretty well in his grasp. So do you want to be an expert on teamwork, or would you rather be an expert on performance in general? It's a question only you can answer, but it's a question that I want you to think about. Experts introduce their own intellectual capital. Experts don't merely facilitate anything. And so when you're working with people, you don't want to feel fulfilled. You don't want to feel successful just because you move people from A to B. You want to move them from A to C because you've introduced your own intellectual capital. That's what experts do. That's why they're important. So, experts can be wrong, but they're not wrong often. I think Elon Musk is a hustler. I don't think he's necessarily an expert. I think he's out for financial gain. I think Steve Jobs was an expert, even though he was flawed in other ways. Not a good family man, Vince Lombardi, the football coach. Brilliant coach, flawed in other ways. Bill Belichick's an expert. Coaches the New England Patriots, one of the finest jobs in history. Some people say he's not interpersonal enough. Yeah, well, but he's an expert at coaching a football team. Carly Fiorina was an expert in one place and not another. And that can happen too. Depends on the environment. Sinatra was an expert, sung the American songbook like nobody else. He did it for too long, but while he was doing it at the top of his game, there he was. So it's often situational, isn't it? Okay, I want to look at some more questions before we end here. Judy Chan, should the pro bono work be outside your field or can it be in your field and you would never do paid work with them? First of all, pro bono work should always be with nonprofits. Never do it for a for-profit. Rare exception, but always a nonprofit. And it doesn't, when you say in your field, all of you listening to me today have expertise in processes. Now, Judy, I happen to know, is expert in healthcare. But she also has processes that are expert. And consequently, you can go outside your field, Judy, if you take your processes and superimpose them on another content area. That's fine. I'll give you an example. One of my clients is Lisa Miller in New Jersey, who is brilliant. She has a 7-figure firm, a dozen people, and she is brilliant at extracting costs from healthcare. I don't know anybody else who's this good at that. And so I'm working with her to take the process of extracting cost and moving it to, say, hospitality, casinos and hotels, because the process will be the same either way. And she could open up whole new markets there. Now, if she needed the publicity, if she needed the visibility, and she doesn't, but I would suggest she could take that same process expertise of extracting costs and she could apply it to the United Way or the Red Cross or the Girl Scouts and do pro bono work like that. So I hope that answers your question. Gail, you've always encouraged us to be more general, to have lots of ways buyers could engage us. That's right. How does that concept jibe with wide and narrow approaches to expertise? My philosophy is this, Gail. Just like when I put up this chart, the more comfortable you are with being broad, the better off you are, because it opens up wider numbers of buyers. And so it's a comfort level. So you might want to start here and broaden out. It depends. If you're entering a new market, I would tend to be narrower and then get broader. But I think the ideal is, which I think is what you're asking me, is to have as many buyers as possible, as many ideal buyers as possible. And that's only possible when you have a broader approach to your expertise. So the expertise I expressed before about myself, first solo consulting, entrepreneurial, and then entrepreneurial people, that's very, very broad. And it's global. And it doesn't matter whether you're starting in the business or you're a veteran, or you have a boutique firm or you operate on your own, or you're an entrepreneur starting a new business in a different field. So I hope that helps, but broader is better. So let's see, what's your battle plan here? I think you have to define your area of expertise. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, your area of expertise is strategy. Then you have to create unique and contrarian intellectual property. So I've created something here, just for our discussion, called the Strategy 6. And then you have to create the visuals and the mantras to support that. So the Strategy 6 is my approach to setting strategy in 6 hours. And that's the expertise I have, setting strategy quickly. And my IP is the Strategy 6. And so my visual is this. How do we instantiate now my IP? How do we make pragmatic and real, as opposed to being just a specialist on my double grid before, how do we make this real and be a trusted advisor? Well, if you just do traditional strategy, your growth is very shallow. And it's shallow because you grow by 2 or 4%, because you're starting from today and you're thinking about how to improve. It's really like planning. The rate of change, so that's traditional strategy, that line. This line is the rate of change. So the normal rate of change, if you allow things, take a few prudent risks, is you're going to grow like that. If you allow the competition to drive you, and what they're doing, you might be stirred to do this because you feel you can't afford to do anything less. But if you use my Strategic 6, that's your rate of change. So where do you want your rate of change to be? 3% or 45%? And so that's the visual I created. So my mantra here, remember I said, what gets you here won't get you there. I can make another dollar, I can't make another minute. So what's your mantra here? The mantra is this. If you spend 6 months setting strategy, you'll wind up 6 years behind. If you spend 6 months setting strategy, you'll wind up 6 months behind. And the reaction that has to be, what the hell do you mean? And that's what experts do. You have to have that kind of solidity and that kind of comfort. Okay, let me check questions again. Robert, back to rating yourself. What are the signs you've moved from a 3, somewhat known, to a 4, widely known? And what's the most important work in going from a 3 to a 4? Good question. So I think, let's see, the first part was, what are the signs you've moved from a 3 to a 4? One sign you've moved from a 3 to a 4, from mostly known to widely known, is that people begin calling you. You get unsolicited referrals, and people begin calling you. So every day I get inquiries, usually by email, from people who have read my work or heard of me or watched something all around the world, and they want to know how to work together. And not all of them are viable, but I do get the inquiries, and some of them are quite viable. Another sign that you've moved from a 3 to a 4 is that you're going to find it easier and easier to create new IP. Now, I know that sounds strange. It almost sounds like chicken and egg. But the more that you are known, the more ideas you're going to get. The more interaction you're going to have, the more stimulus you're going to have, the more fuel you're going to have. So you'll find it easier and easier to create IP. And then the final thing, the final sign from 3 to a 4, is that you'll find that people are much more accepting. In other words, it's easier to get things published. It's easier to get a speech. It's easier to get accepted anywhere. When I went to Wiley, I went to my agent, first of all, my book agent. And I said, Marshall Goldsmith and I want to do a book together. Here's the title and 10 chapter headings. And he said, well, okay, I'll need a proposal. And so, now, this is the guy who placed $1 Million Consulting originally, which is on the shelves for 25 years through 5 editions. And he said, I'll need more work. I said, more work? So I wrote to the publisher at Wiley, who I happen to know. And I said to him, Matt, Marshall Goldsmith and I want to do a book. Here's the title and 10 chapter headings. He said, we'll be back to you tomorrow. And the next day, his senior editor, he got back to me, and he said, we'll send you a contract. Here's your advance, beautiful advance. When can you have it? And so when you have that kind of expertise, when you have that kind of going from 3 to 4 to 5, you'll get a much higher acceptance rate. Now, the other part of your question is, what's the most important work in going from a 3 to a 4? The most important thing is to get in front of your ideal buyers, that cohort, with important and irresistible value. So what gets on their radar screens? Ask yourself this, Robert. What do they read? That's where I want to publish. Where do they hang out? That's where I want to network. What do they attend? That's where I want to speak. And to whom do they listen? That's why I want to influence. And so you want to get into that kind of stream so you get on the radar screens. And then you want to say things that are hard to ignore. Not easy to agree with. Hard to ignore. That's a difference. Elon Musk is a hustler. Tesla's going to be sold. It's a charity, not a car company. That's my honest opinion. People might violently disagree. But somebody interested in strategy might say, tell me more. What's the difference? How do we get investment like that? And so forth. So I hope that answers your question. If not, right back, we still have 5 minutes left. And during that 5 minutes, I want to go back here. I want to impress upon you the fact that one of the least expensive things you can do with the highest rate of return is to build your expertise. And if you accompany building your expertise, that chart I had back there, with visibility, starting with targeted visibility in your field, and then going to shameless promotion of what you've produced, you'll find people coming to you. And when people come to you, it eliminates two things. It eliminates any shred of notion of worrying about your credibility, and it eliminates any kind of resistance to fee, because you're not proving yourself. When people come to established experts in the field, they are psychologically ready to invest whatever they need to for that kind of help. And that's the dynamic that you want to set up. So what we're talking about today, and fittingly what is the last live stream of this year, of this first year in this sequence of 6, is how you can take what we talked about before, the strategists, the advisors, six-figure projects, and so forth, innovation, and you can say to yourself, where do I want to build expertise? What are the hot issues? Who should I know about? And how do I begin doing that tomorrow? And this is something that you can indeed do tomorrow. You can do it immediately. So I hope over this year, I've helped you see some of the wisdom of the content, but even more so the power of the process. So I invite you to join me next year on my site for this next round of 10 episodes in the Genesis of the Sale and/or the 10 episodes in Exponential Growth. I'd really urge you to do both. They're only an hour each. And you'll find that you can use these to your advantage on an ongoing basis. So I want to thank you very much for joining me all this year. I want to thank Gary Hallquist back here, who's done this for me all this year, and my security detail, who happens to be asleep at the moment. But if you have questions about this, if something's unclear, you didn't hear something at a certain time, drop me an email. I'll be happy to respond. I wish you Godspeed, and I wish you well. And I wish you all the expertise in the world. Thank you.